I wonder if I could ask a question to sort of shape it a bit and then take a couple questions. I wanted to ask you the question of when you look at radical Islam and the threat of terrorism, how do you really see non-military means actually effectively attacking that problem? In a McCain administration, I should say.
Obviously it's an important question. First, I'm glad to be here. It's a thrill to be at the Hubert H. Humphrey Institute. I was thinking whimsically, and I hope you'll take this in the right way, that if Hubert Humphrey was still a leader in the Democratic Party, I would not be at this convention this way. Because that was the combination I grew up with, a progressive domestic government and very principled, muscular foreign policy. So now that I've cleared my chest, look, and let me say a few general words about John McCain, because I've spent a lot of time, probably more than any other subject, working on foreign and defense policy with John and traveling a lot. And I think the important thing to say about John, perhaps some voters, but nobody who's really studied his record, will see him as inclined to the military option because of the visibility and persistence of the questions around the Iraq War. But John, in fact, he has what I would say from my own conversations with him, a veteran's distaste for military conflict because, hey, he's been through it and seen friends die and spent 5.5 years as a POW, as we know. So he's a very strong believer in, one, the power of our ideas, the idea of freedom, 2, the importance of economic assistance, 3, the power that, I'm going to just mention this because Rob will undoubtedly pick it up, the powerful role that free trade plays, not only in supporting economic growth here in our country, but in elevating literally billions of people in the world out of extreme poverty over the last several decades. So John's a believer, to use an overused phrase, not only in hard American power, but in soft American power. And so I come to this, and all of what I've said, I think, relates. I mean, there's no question that in my opinion, and this is a difference, I think, between Senator Obama, Senator McCain, there is good and evil in the world. And there's some people in the world who just hate us for various reasons, hate our allies, and ultimately, we are only going to make them more law-abiding or less threatening members of the international community by either arousing fear or confronting them, as we have in Iraq and Afghanistan, with a lot on the line in doing that. But there's a lot of other people, certainly in the world of Islam. We operate on the not just the sort of faith, but the conclusion that most people in the Islamic world are not violent jihadists. And so everything that I talked about, I think, is important. The other, one, to have our foreign policy, John's a reformer. I talked about that a lot last night. One of the things I bet most people don't think of John as a reformer on, but it'll happen if and when he gets to be president. He's going to take a very fresh look at our foreign and defense institutions, agencies, and I think you can expect a shakeup here. And that the net result of it is that the State Department and USAID and the public diplomacy part of our government will get a lot more centrality and a lot more support in a McCain administration. But I'd go back to everything I said. We need better public diplomacy to get our case out in the Islamic world as the counter to Al-Qaeda and that ilk. We're not doing that well. We've tried, but we've still not figured out how to do it. I think trade is very important. At one point a while back, I said one of the most significant things we could do to modernize, to help our Arab allies modernize and Islamic countries modernize so that people would not be so alienated that they would join terrorist groups, is to get them all to get into the World Trade Organization. Because what comes from that, as counterintuitive as it sounds, is a rising standard of living and a kind of investment in a different path forward. I think I've already given you too long an answer, but that's a general, it's as specific as a response to your question and a general statement about what I think will be a very balanced, I haven't mentioned financial assistance, but well, I did briefly. I think you'll see the financial assistance we give, particularly for economic development, going up.
What do you think what about support of schools in these areas of most concern? I mean, do you think there's a right way and a wrong way to do that?
Yeah, you know, this is an idea that's been bouncing around a lot, and I can actually remember a conversation that John and I had with Prime Minister Blair, and then a very similar conversation with his successor, Prime Minister Brown, because Tony Blair had a great idea that to start an international educational foundation, which governments would contribute to, perhaps individuals could, or foundations as well, and it would go about building schools, sort of public schools, if you will, particularly in the Islamic world. And I think he was at the start focused on Pakistan particularly, because as you all know, for a lot of the families in the Islamic world who want something better for their children, the schools that are most appealing end up being the madrasas, which are heavily ideological, as well as better schools. So I think that that's an idea that I can't commit Senator, hopefully President McCain on that, but I know that's an idea but those two prime ministers have had, and that really engages John's attention. And I think it's one of the ways, how do you stop the cycle of ideological, theologically based hatred that a lot of children are being raised in? Well, you get them in a better school, which is going to educate them and raise their hopes about what they can make of their own lives without having to, blow up somebody else or some building.